Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hello, everyone. This is a public service announcement. It is now September. Yes, it snuck up on us, but it tells you there's only a few more months till the holidays. So get ready. It's coming. But it's also National Chicken Month. So we're supposed to be eating chicken this month, apparently. So Chris Cornell is sitting next to me at the Low Carb USA conference. And what does he have? A bunch of Simply Snacking chicken snacks in there. And I've been partial to the beef, I got to admit, but he got me hooked on some new flavors. The Italiano, there's the chicken and cherries, there's black beans and salsa flavor, and they're all decent. So that was what we lived on during the conference. He could just pull it out of his backpack. So I got a couple free samples from him, which was cool. And they were also a co-sponsor of the meeting. So a lot of our listeners, you're listening now, came up to me there and said, "Oh my gosh, this stuff's really great." They had never tried it before. So they said, "We know now why you have them as a sponsor." And I said, "Well, I'm not dumb. It's good stuff." So anyways, get out there, get your chicken this month. Next month, you can get back to the beef flavors. But Chris, thanks for sharing with me. I'm now hooked. And thanks for helping to get me through the conference, because we never had a break. Tons of great information, and it was fun the whole time. So Simply Snacking, thanks for sticking it to us with National Chicken Month. And everyone, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today I wanted to talk to you about a story of something that happened to me in med school. And it was a story of kind of bitterness, kind of grace, judgment, and it all happened at one time. So I was on trauma surgery. I'll tell you just for a little background on this. At USC, I first did general surgery, and then trauma surgery as part of the same rotation. And in general surgery, these guys were, in my opinion, extremely dysfunctional, throwing instruments, yelling at the nurses constantly. And I'm thinking, no way I'm going to be a surgeon. I scrubbed out of a appendectomy, which is a pretty straightforward surgery. And, while we were scrubbing out, the doctor looks at me and said, "I just saved that man's life." I was like, okay. And then at that time, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool stuff. And then I did trauma surgery. I'm like, oh my gosh, if these guys are arrogant and difficult, the trauma surgeons are going to be way worse. And so one of the head trauma surgeons I happened to be assigned to, and he's well known. And so, I'll tell this story. Actually, I wasn't planning on it, but this impacted me. I can't verify that it's true or not true, but I walked into the hospital with this guy early in the morning, so like 5 in the morning, and we're just talking about life. And I noticed he saw the cleaning lady. He says, "Hey, Ann, how are you today? How's your kids? How's school?" And and then he knew the people at the cafeteria, and we had coffee together, and he knew everyone by name and knew their family history and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. This is a really nice guy. And so we started talking about what's important in life and just having a little discussion. I'm just a med student, he's just tagging along with this guy who's a genius. And I said, "Yeah, you're nice to everyone." He goes, "Yeah, that's kind of just how you should treat people in life, right?" And so he went on to tell me a story, and I said, "Why do you believe what you believe?" Because I could tell he's a guy of faith. I said, "Why do you believe that?" And he said, "Well, one day, everyone who gets shot in a gang shooting is an innocent bystander, but really they're not, but they say they are. But this guy legitimately was." And he said, "I was scrubbed into the surgery, and him and his partner were like, I guess this guy coded a bunch of times. He lost so much blood, and it was just a bloody battle. And it turned out he was going out to call his girlfriend at a payphone. Back in the day, they didn't have cell phones, so they had payphones back then. That's how old I am. And he gets caught in the crossfire of a gang shooting, and he gets shot like multiple times. Wrong place, wrong time. Good kid, Anyways, he's in surgery, and it's a disaster, and he doesn't think the kid's going to make it. And he scrubs out, and he goes, "I'm going to let the family know what's happening." And so he gets out and talks to the mom and the dad. And while they're talking, mom was on the phone with the son, telling him what was going on. At the same time, they were talking. And after he was done with the conversation, he turned around and hit his his watch on the corner of the desk, and it fell off, and he stuck it in his coat pocket, went back in, scrubbed it into surgery, and the kid again, like several times, coded on the table and ended up pulling through, and they saved his life. And a couple days later, the kid's, he's on a ventilator, gets off the ventilator, wakes up and looks at the doctor, and he thanks him, and he said, "Hey, doc, I want to thank you and for all you did." And he goes, "Are you still looking for your watch?" And the doctor said, "What?" He said, "Are you still looking for your watch?" He says, "As a matter of fact, I am. I lost it." He said, "It's in your coat pocket." He says, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Well, because when you were talking to my mom and dad, my mom," he described the whole scene to him. My mom was talking to my brother, and here's what my dad was wearing. And you hit your watch on the corner of the desk and knocked it off, and you stuck it in your coat pocket. It's in your closet." He's like, "That's crazy." He goes back in, pulls out his coat. There's his watch, right? So I'm like, this is pretty crazy, you know? So he could have made up the story. I don't know, but he seemed to be pretty darn convinced. And the look in his eyes when he told me the story, I believe the guy. He had a lot to lose by saying that kind of stuff. So anyways, a couple days into my rotation, young girl, 9 years old, car accident, unrestrained, meaning not in a seatbelt, sustained massive trauma, head trauma, abdominal trauma, ruptured spleen, ruptured liver, total disaster. And so I was happy to be scrubbed in on the surgery. I was just holding suctioning. I wasn't really doing anything. I was just being a med student, but I could hear the conversation. And these nurses were like saying, "What kind of dad would this be? How could someone do this to their daughter? She's going to die." Because, and, you know, but despite everyone's efforts, she ended up passing away. And I was thinking, man, I'm glad I'm not a trauma surgeon. This is brutal work, right? And the frustration, the anger, resentment towards the family. I'm thinking, what kind of dad would let this happen to? And I was a young dad at the time. I'm thinking, what kind of dad would let this happen to his daughter? He's there to protect her, and he lets her die in a car accident because she's not wearing a stinking seatbelt. Everyone else in the family is wearing one. 9 years old, life lost, game lost for us doctors. But I thought, man, so you know, they broke the news to the dad to let him know, and mom. And I walked out a little bit later after scrubbing out and doing stuff and, you know, talking, and I saw him sitting in the hallway by himself crying, right? And I realized, oh, that's that dang dad. So I went up and started talking to him. Later on, I found out this guy was taking his family on a surprise trip to Disneyland. They had driven down from Northern California. They were almost at their destination. Daughter got a stomach ache, wasn't feeling well. And he said, "Honey, I'll pull over at the next exit. Just wait and I'll pull over." Well, she unstrapped her seatbelt and went into the back to get the medicine for her stomach. And it was drizzly that morning, early, like 5 in the morning. Dad hit the off ramp, hit oil, slicked up because of the rain, and slid off the road, hit the guardrail, overturned the car, killed his daughter, right? So all of a sudden, when I realized that, and this was corroborated by the son and the wife, you realize, man, we passed judgment, hated this poor guy, and he's going through hell. And this is something that he's not going to ever get over, right? He lost his daughter because of his mistake or hitting oil, and her taking her seatbelt off right at that time after having her seatbelt on the entire time. And so, you know, I just realized it's so easy to pass judgment. And not too long after that, my daughter, we were driving down from Big Bear, and I thought my wife buckled her in the car seat, and she thought I did. And we drove all the way down the mountain in the snow with my daughter not buckled in. And you think, holy cow, man, could you imagine that could have happened to me? You know, so I think sometimes we pass judgment and we just don't realize, we don't know the whole story. And I think once you learn the story and you see, and it gave me such compassion for this guy, and I saw him as a broken guy, that they woke up that morning excited about a road trip and spending time with family and building up his kids and taking them to Disneyland for the first time in their life. And he ends up with a dead daughter that night. So I think, and it told me something about appreciating life, appreciating what you got. And also about, you know, the battle that these trauma surgeons go through, and why do they have faith? And I think a lot of them do, because they deal with death every day, right? And they save lives, and I've watched them do unbelievable things. And as a matter of fact, my first night in the ER, you know, there was like a trauma bay at LA County USC, and I think there were 11 gunshot wounds, all gang related. And I told my wife, record the news tonight because I can't wait to see this stuff. This is crazy. I've never seen anything like this. And the ER docs are looking at me like, Brian, this happens all the time. This is kind of like a normal night for us. Not one mention on the news about all these shootings and homicides. And, I was like, wow, this is crazy stuff. How is this not on the news every day when this is what these guys are seeing in the inner city? But what I did notice is the trauma surgeons would do miracles. They would do absolute miracles, and I'd watch people live that never should have lived, and they were very humble about it. And they never said, I just saved that guy's life. Here's what, and they're like, wow, he's not out of the woods. Let's see what happens. But I think it's something with dealing with stress so intensely. A lot of those guys get atrial fibrillation, because it just tells you the effect of stress on the body. As a matter of fact, here, and then the other thing, I don't want to rag on surgeons because there's a lot of great surgeons who are friends of mine, but especially the trauma surgeon for sure. And the ER docs are my favorite, but they're the coolest people on earth. But sometimes it's the system too. When I was at USC, the surgeons were annoyed because they were basically on salary. So no matter how many surgeries they did, they got paid the same, and they had an endless supply of patients, so they didn't have to be kind and decent. When I got to Mercy Hospital, I'll tell you, George Zorn and a couple of the other docs there. He's a trauma surgeon. The first night I'm the ICU intern, and I call him. I go, this guy's got appendicitis or something. No return. Oh, gosh. 15 minutes later, call him again. No return call. 10 minutes later, half an hour later, hour later. So all of a sudden, it's like 1 a.m. He comes rolling in a suit and tie. And I said, Dr. Zorn? He said, yeah, because I had never met him before. He said, first of all, let me apologize. I was scrubbed into surgery. I just got out, and I wanted to change and come up and meet you. And I was like, oh my gosh. He goes, I said, look, here's my situation. He goes, I'll take him right now. Changed, scrubbed him in, took him. He said, thank you so much for calling me. And now that's the private sector. So he appreciates the business, and he's a great surgeon, and he is kind and decent and nice to everyone. So, it's one of those things. One of the nice things about being in a private hospital, besides at Mercy, I was surprised I didn't have to go through a metal detector to get into the hospital. At LA County USC, I was frisked and went through a metal detector every day I was there. So I was looking around for the metal detector when I got to my new residency program. But the other thing I loved is Dr. Averill, Bob Averill, one of the top trauma and orthopedic surgeons. I was looking at him, and at USC, you would get lashed if you asked any questions or did anything wrong. So anyways, I was asking him a question about a patient, and I said, Dr. Averill, and he looked at me and said, what did you call me? And I'm thinking, oh no. And I looked down at his name tag. I'm like, it's Averill, Dr. Averill. He said, my name is Bob. Call me Bob. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just a little intern, and you're like, I can call you first name. It's kind of weird, right? But it wasn't about ego. It was about helping the patient. And, he's a great doc, and a lot of people love him. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of good things. And I think we all learn a lot. And these guys have been through a heck of a lot, and they see a heck of a lot. And so I think learning compassion, kindness, not to judge, hear the whole story first. Those were the lessons I learned on trauma surgery, and also just about, the dedication that these guys have. I mean, they dedicate their lives. They're up at, all night. They're doing surgery all the time. And just to see, and some of the, obviously a lot of the people they work on are not the salt of the earth people, right? So a lot of the stuff is self-inflicted, but they didn't pass judgment. They said, hey, I'm here to help my patient no matter how they got shot or what they were doing, or if they were robbing a bank. I'm here to help the patient, not to judge them on what they did. And I think we could all learn some lessons from that. About helping people, loving your neighbor, all those kind of things. So this is my lesson that I learned in trauma surgery. I'm sure there's a ton more, but I wanted to share that one with you because that story really impacted me with the dad, because it's so easy to pass judgment. It's so easy to say, well, if he would have done this, he shouldn't have done this. He shouldn't have got off that exit. But things happen sometimes, despite our best efforts. So that's the story for this episode. Thank you for sticking with me. Bless you. Have a great week, and be kind to people. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.